If you would like to get your song reviewed, dear listener, there's the Filthy Capitalist option. As Sori says, 125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You don't have to be a part of the alliance. You don't have to be part of the group.
Wait a minute.
And the biggest thing is you don't have to wait. You hop, skip, and jump right in front of everybody. 125 gets you there. You do that 3 times, and then get mashed down to the $75 rate for perpetuity.
Yes!
Also, there is a band review option. So if you've got a band and you're trying to get your band some exposure, hit me up at insori@gmail.com, and I'll show you the details about how to pull that off.
You can also jump on Patreon, and there is a option on the tiers to be able to get your band reviewed. Yep. Obviously, we can't lie to you, so we can't guarantee a positive review. Get what you get.
It's just rubbish.
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 That's British for garbage.
My favorite is the community option. $1 at the gate gets you in at Patreon. You get to join an alliance. The alliance joins their points together, and that helps determine what songs that we do.
The alliances hang out on Discord.
Message me on Patreon to get the link.
And they do all kinds of other cool things. They do Minecraft. Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. It's really a community within the community. Anybody can go on the village, facebook.com/VillageXchange. There's 160,000+ people on the channel. What's cool about the Discord is that it offers a real opportunity for community connection, friendship, that type of thing.
And it's on Discord, so if you're not a Facebook person, it's for you.
You start off at $1.
Right.
Plus you get exclusives. Sori and I are working on a song. So the first 15 seconds of that was on Patreon. Also, at $15 here and above, when we actually debut the video, they're going to be there live with us. There you are, dear listener.
Buy our merch.
Buy our merch, indeed. A child shall lead them. My girl got raptured. You know, it is what it is. Guys, let me know what the highest thingy you have available to you. This thing is saying that it should have been at, we should be at 4K, but I think, what did we do? We maxed out at 2160 is 4K, by the way, guys. Faith should come from the heart, right? Not the brain. I know people who believe in God but don't understand much about religion, just pure faith. Yeah, I disagree with the faith should come from the heart and not the brain thing. But I don't want to hijack this guy's stream. If there's something in the song that jumps on that, then I'll piggyback on it. We got 4 songs, so maybe I'll stay back for it and ask me anything. I am not sure. Okay.
All right, up next is another Insomnium song for DJ Ben. The name of the song is The Antagonist. This is song number 3 on their 2021 album. Let's check it out.
All right, guys, here we go. This is Insomnium. Song number 3 is The Antagonist. Son of a bitch, I didn't talk to the people. I want to get these lyrics up.
Okay. Well, a random Ask Me Anything. Actually, don't even have the stream up here. Whoop, here we go.
Plus,
hold on.
Guy's getting a little chippy. Where is everybody?
Vince Grohl,
Talk to
please,
the
I
people.
posted about faith and suffering and growing closer to God. Let me see. I went back on my chemo, says Wolves in the Midst. And at 16, got the bone marrow match that saved my life. Wow. Maybe there was more too. God revealed to me he was going to use me to show my doctors and nurses miracles exist. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Wait, there's more. Okay, how far do we go here? I'm looking up. Okay, here we go. When I was 13 years old, when my family was still in Orlando, I made the choice to go off of my chemo treatments. I was underweight and malnourished and hurting so bad, I told my mom to let it end that night. I reached out to God that night and I went through the worst pain any 13-year-old boy can ever go through. And the next morning I woke up in sweat. God revealed to me he was going to use me to show my doctors and nurses miracles exist. I went back on my chemo and at 16 got the bone marrow match that saved my life. Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
All right.
No, he doesn't dye his beard. It's just, it is nice and dark like that.
What happened?
He asked if you dye your beard. Honestly, look at it over here. It does look like you must
the
dye
light
it.
doesn't come out?
Huh?
No.
Nope.
If I did, I would color it like in Islam. Muhammad said, to color your beard. Not color it black, though. Because you're lying. All right, here we go. Song number 3.
It's something about a baseball club. I don't know. Black Sox.
It's the Black Sox baseball club. Yeah. I was very interested in the shirt myself.
You were?
Yep. All right, here we go. The Antagonist. Let's go. Lyrics, here we go.
Once upon a time, when the years flew brightly by, you held my hand through the night. You held my heart.
Wow. Okay. You want to go first?
I mean, that's an interesting. My mom, my mom used to work at this hospital. Like this was like a psych ward type of situation, and I swear to God, my mom would show up sometimes with people. She would take people from the psych ward and have them live with us. You know, like if the story was too horrible, she just couldn't do it. You come home sometimes and be this dude over and like, all right, mom, what's the deal? Like, yeah, this kid needs a friend, play with him. Then she'd tell us all this shit about like the way they were abused or whatever. So she'd be like, just make sure he's not alone with your little brother. And like, and like there was one time when she took somebody in and the person lived with us for like a year, like room and board, all that shit. That's the type of person my mother was, man. Like she is just like, that's just how she was, But then she died by herself, man. People took it like 3 or 4 days to find her. And then at the funeral, it was like me, my 2 brothers, my stepdad, like 8 people there. My mom literally like touched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And I remember like being up there, my brothers couldn't talk. My older brother had just come back from, he had to go ID her. She was all the way in Hawaii at the time. So it was crazy. It was crazy, like standing up and talking about my mom to like 5 people, considering like how much she put out for everybody. Like, I just remember thinking to myself, like, what the fuck? And it was crazy because I had some church function to do that day, and so I think that was that day, right? We asked B and he was like, yeah. But yeah, like that was a really interesting turning point for me because I was like, okay, you can like give every part of your being to people and it won't matter. And then I thought to myself, well, she did that thing for those people. Like, that doesn't mean they owe her anything.
But babe, how much of that do you think comes down to if you live and die in a small town and your obituary goes in the paper, people show up for it. You guys moved all over the place. Like, how many people that her life actually touched even knew?
Yeah, I mean, enough people knew. Like, I'm not going to get into details, but like enough people knew to where there should have been way more than 5 people. But at the end of the day, like, to your point, we moved around a lot. We never had really deep roots. My mom never really got close to anybody. My mom was kind of like, I mean, honestly, like, it's pretty much me. Like, she never really had like close outside relationships. And, she was, last couple of years of her life were pretty anonymous. I don't think I'm going to have that anonymity, but it's one of those things where it's like, that's kind of where I developed that philosophy. Like, if you did something in that moment to help that person, then that's when all that stuff happened, was in that moment. That's it. Nobody owes you anything after that. And if you did the good thing for the good thing's sake, then you won't care if somebody comes back and thanks you afterward. And like, that's when I adopted that mentality, because I was thinking to myself, like, this is some bullshit. And I'm like, for what? She's dead. Like, she's not even here right now. So what does she care about who's showing up to the funeral or whatever? The funerals are for the living anyway. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy moment, like looking at that shit, and I'm like, yo, this is like, I was happy for her because I knew how much of a struggle the whole thing was for her. Especially relative to like my stepdad, like they could I don't want to say never figure it out. I think he figured it out pretty early, but she could never really figure it out. And I don't think she wanted to like deal with the ramifications of what all that meant for her. But anyway, like that's what the song reminded me of when he was talking about like, you know, nobody's gonna remember him in his tombstone and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And that's a big, you know, we're reading that book with N.T. Wright, the Resurrection book, and they were talking about how the Greek understanding of eternal life was your memory, was the legacy that you created. And so if you look at Greek literature and blah, 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 people talk about living forever. They're not talking about actually living forever. They're talking about the memory and the legacy of what they did. And that's how they live forever. Kind of like, you know, Achilles and all the rest of it. In that movie, Troy, they did a pretty good job with it, where it was like, if you go down there, you'll be a legend forever, but you're going to die. And he goes, okay, you know, so like that's their mentality on that. And I think like that's not a Christian idea. You know, a Christian idea is like, no, like you're going to live, like actually really live. Like you're going to have eyelids and all that shit. Like if you would have seen Jesus at the resurrection and put him on a scale, he would have moved some numbers. Like that's the claim. So if that's the truth, then like, okay, so 5 people show up at your mother's funeral. Who cares? Like, you know, that's the way she lived her life. She lived her life as a person who, like, it was about us and, you know, our little whatever we were doing. And then everybody else was kind of, you know, on the periphery. And the only people that really, really knew my mother were like the people in the house that saw everything. You know what I'm saying? Like the world, the outside world, like their perception of my mom, like it was completely off. She was such a complicated person. So it was like, you know, that's how I reconciled the shit. Like I felt like a great injustice had been done, but like the more and more I was thinking about it, I'm like, you know. And then the other side of it is like, my mom hurt people too, man. You know what I'm saying? And those people didn't show up either. And I'm grateful for that. So that's the other side of it. It's like, okay, like when she dies, like all the people that she helped, you want them showed up there to, you know, give her flowers. But on the other side, so should we also have all the people that she hurt go in there and take away the flowers? Like, you wouldn't want that to happen, but that's just as real. And she contributed just as much of that into the world too. So that kind of like gave me a perspective on things. Like, okay, like all the good shit she did that was really genuine and true from her heart, God is talking to her about it right now. And all the evil shit she did that was evil and genuinely from her heart, Jesus took care of that 2,000 years ago. And so, like, if that's not good enough for you, and God was like, well, quit the team and find something else to do. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't like, fuck you, Vin. It was just more like, come on, bro.
That's the way you like to be spoken to as well. It's a very direct.
Well, yeah, because it makes things really clear. Like, yeah, it's true. Like, if you did something good for somebody, they don't owe you anything. They don't owe you they don't even owe you a thank you. They don't owe you anything. You did that good thing because they were in need. You met that need. Your job is done. How they respond, you know, is immaterial. And I really, you know, ever since then, like, that's kind of been my thing, and I really haven't cared. And, you know, I don't know if it's like a very complex theologized defense mechanism about people, or if it's, you know, just really, I don't know that with a lot of my mentalities about shit, because it's shit that I say a lot of the times nobody else does. And so it's like really arrogant to be like, yo, nobody looks at this way, but, you know, I'm right. You know, so I don't know. Maybe it was some divine revelation, or maybe it was just, you know, the way I'm trying to handle the fact that my mother put out so much for people, and in my view, there was nothing to show for it. And then, like, coming out of that situation to go into this other situation where, like, I was like the, you know,
jeez,
the centerpiece of all this shit. And I just thought to myself, like, man, I'm pretty sure when it's over for me, none of these people will be around. And I'm, you know, like, so yeah, that was a life-changing day for me. That was really life-changing for me. And, you know, like I said, like, that's why I said with you, like, when we started beefing with those people, and you're like, oh, after all that shit I did for them? And I'm like, well, who cares? Like, did you do that shit for them so that later on, if there's a conflict, you were going to buy their loyalty? Or were you just doing it to meet that need in that
I was
moment.
just doing it to meet the need, but then it did become revealed that after, when they were, you know, it doesn't matter what I did for them, but like, whatever. I get it. I get it. But obviously it was part of the thing because I felt like there should be some loyalty.
Yeah, I think we're all socialized to think that way about things. But, you know, how did I become this man when I fell from grace? The one they all spite and fear, the one you shun. Little by little, man. Little by little. That's how these things happen. That's you know, you gotta take short accounts of yourself. I think that the channel is. I think it's the thing about the channel that we've all figured out. You know, it's about like we hear these songs and then we talk about like everybody's philosophies because we're all trying to like figure out how to navigate this crazy shit together. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's like, yeah, like how did I become this man? You know, and to me, like, I have no idea why, especially in the metal community, there's such a emotional reaction to the concept of original sin. Like, it's so crazy to me. Yeah. To me, it's like the ultimate like get out of jail free card. Like I wouldn't say it that way in a kind of Christian environment, but like I don't ask these questions. Yeah. Like, how did I become this person? Yeah. It's like I usually ask, like, if I'm doing things well, or if I have a good conversation with the kids, or if I'm in a situation where I'm like, oh, I made her happy. Like, that's the shit where I go, how did I do that? But like, me fucking shit up or whatever, I never ask those questions. I just never ask those questions. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm more like, yo, how did I end up with all this shit? But, you know, there's a lot of people that, like, when they get confronted with their own capacity for evil, they get really, really freaked out, and it really causes an identity crisis. And a lot of the times when people are like, you know, like, oh, this guy won't apologize, this girl won't apologize. It's like, to do that is to acknowledge a certain deficiency that they don't have any philosophical way of coming back from. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's one of the things about our culture where, like, it got really toxic post-Trump. And I'm not blaming any particular party, but it just got extremely toxic to the point where it was like, you're like the worst person in the world, and we're going to label you a Nazi and cancel you and excise you from the culture. You're out of Twitter, you're out of this because you said something that hurt somebody's feelings. Like, what is going on? Yeah. And people are really like, you can tell, because I was watching an interview yesterday or whatever, like, you can tell when like people are the bad guy, but they cannot conceive of themselves as the bad guy, so they cannot see the shit like right in front of them. I was watching an interview yesterday. I was like, holy shit. And everybody watching it was like, yo, you're crazy. Like, what are you doing? It was so obvious to everybody else, but it was clear to him that he was right, and the people he was advocating for was completely on the side of good and all the rest of it. And there was no thought like, maybe you're the bad guys. Like, I was watching a clip of these guys, and both of them had served overseas or whatever. And they were talking for, you know, it was a long form show talking about all that shit. And then finally the host says, were we the bad guys? And the guy, they both kind of got quiet. And the guy, he was a Marine. And like, if you know Marines, it's like, yeah, you would say that. The guy basically said, well, halfway over there, I was like, these guys were in Afghanistan. They're fighting Tally are extremely, you know, you got to respect them. If you don't respect them, that's okay. You'll die. But you know, they were talking about the righteousness of the Taliban cause. If we were in Afghanistan, if
what was the I know I should know this, but what was their cause?
Taliban is government of Afghanistan. And we invaded their country because of Bin Laden. Yep. But we murked Bin Laden in 2012. So what the hell, you know, typical empire shit. And so they're fighting to defend their homeland. Right? That's a righteous cause. Yeah. We invaded their place. Like, that's a righteous cause. So yeah. So the guy, so he's out. He's like, are we the bad guys? And the guy stops and he goes, I don't really care. I just wanted to fight and test myself. So I don't care. And I thought to myself, like, okay, this is a guy who's accepted himself. He's accepted this concept of, and of course, that's a very extreme example.
Yeah.
Like, you joined the military so that you could go and test yourself. Like, you literally went across the world and shot at people so you could test yourself. Unfortunately, that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yo, that was such a crazy moment because the interviewer like laughed. He was like, and it's like the question never got answered. It was like, of course we were the bad guys, like obviously, you know? And it's just amazing to me, like the concept that we want to look at ourselves as good as the good guys all the time. And so we ask these questions when in reality, you know the answer. Like, the person that you truly are at the root of who you are when nobody's around, or when those thoughts come into your head and you have the Freudian slips. The reason that we all know what a Freudian slip is because all of us universally have the same experience of having a thought that we know doesn't need to be expressed out into larger society because we're going to get judged for it because it's crazy. So it's like, look, when I was hanging out with dudes, like, you know, I knew some of these people. Like, when I was hanging out with dude, there was never like, yeah, man, I just very happy. I was very happy during 9/11 because now it means in a year I'm going to be able to strap up and test myself and kill a bunch of people and blah, 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 and have a nice, wonderful tour, you know, tourism, like jihad tourism, all this shit. Like, I'm sitting next to dude, like, he never talked like that, but that was in him the entire time. And whatever was in me was in me the entire time. Yeah. And so, you know, like, I'm blown away that in the metal community, like, I would be like,
you think that
hammering that shit. Of course original sin is real. Yes, obviously. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Shout out to Miss Mud staying consistent. I appreciate it. She's holding the fort. All right, what did you get? Or what's your thought?
So for me, like this song, like especially when he got down to, and when they look back to these times and write down this tale, how will they remember my part? How will they retell? I do this weird thing, and I don't know. Part of me wants to look it up to see if, like, is there like a mental illness that's connected to this? Why do I do this? And I've done it all my life. But like,
find it on TikTok.
I imagine if there was an audience, what would they say to this or that thing?
Oh, okay.
That's going on.
Okay.
So sometimes the audience is on my side. Sometimes the audience feels bad for me. Sometimes the audience is like, wow, you're a really terrible person. So it's like one of those situations. Sometimes it'll be like a news article. So like, for instance, if I'm like, I've got the kids in the tub right there and I have to turn around and grab something from the cupboard. I'm like, what if somebody drowns in like that 1 second that I turned around? And then the news article, mom leaves 3-year-old in tub. I didn't leave him in the tub. I was right there. So like stuff like that. I see. It's like that. So, anyway, I had this thought, like, you know, a little while ago, and I was like, yeah, what, when I, like, okay, so the stories in the Bible, we were always taught to think that they were like heroes, and they're told like the heroes of the Bible, like when you went to like Sunday school or whatever, that's how they always presented it, like these were all heroes. So anytime I came to like this negative character trait of theirs, or like this really shitty thing that they would do, I would just be like, well, you know what, I just try to like make it okay.
Yeah.
Because they were the Bible heroes. And then I met Vinny, and he was like, yeah, but Joseph enslaved a whole group of people because of what he did. Yeah. And I'm like, but I felt very uncomfortable when you said that, because I was like, you can't say that about Joseph. And it might be true, but I'm not sure that we're supposed to highlight that. But you were like, it's right there in the Bible. He looks like genuinely confused and concerned that I'm not looking at it that way. So,
well, I mean, if it's explicitly, I mean, there's a lot of things that are like weird, like the Antichrist, the horns, all this.
Yeah.
But there's other shit that's pretty.
It's just there. Yeah.
Literally says like the entire region was now, you know, slaves to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's how the book ends, and then the book starts in Exodus with the Israelites being enslaved to Pharaoh. right? So it's like,
yeah, I understand. I understand.
You know,
but that's not how I was doing it. I was just like, I didn't even remember that verse existed because it was a negative one. So I just pushed it to the side and I only focused on like the high points of them because I thought you were supposed to, how am I supposed to look at this person as a hero if they're doing all this bad stuff? For me, I'm not a part of a religion that is a works-based religion where like you have to do the right thing to get yourself to heaven. But it's always been my mentality. Even to this very moment, it's very, very difficult for me to believe that Jesus, like, I know that Jesus died on the cross. That's not hard for me to believe. I know that my sins are covered. That's not hard for me to believe. But that it's like completely like, I don't know, there's some disconnect that's still there even in this very moment. So as I'm like thinking over my life, I thought to myself, well, if I died tomorrow, like what would my life look like if it was like written in a book? And so I was focusing on all of my negative points as a mother, as a wife, as everything like I've ever done in my life. It was just like everything was like in a negative. And I was like, wow, that's like kind of like embarrassment is kind of like still it's like a big thing for me. I'm like, that's kind of an embarrassing story. Like there's nothing like this really even, there's not even anything good there that I could say. But then like I remembered that there was, you guys are probably familiar with the story of Abraham and Sarah in the Bible, and God had promised them that they were going to have a son and that from that son was going to come like nations and that they were going to bless the whole world from that one kid. Well, they're waiting and like Sarah's getting older and she gets beyond the years of like, she can't have a kid anymore. Like she's gone past that. She's through menopause, you know? And so now she's like, this is not going to happen. And she doesn't believe that it's going to happen. And so she basically creates a Handmaid's Tale situation and takes her servant.
No, she really does.
And she shoves her in there with Abraham, forces both of them to do something to get her pregnant, to get this kid. And it's like, well, that's kind of a black spot, especially after you see Handmaid's Tale.
I got that black spot.
It just, well, I can't.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that it's a woman that's running that operation.
Yeah.
In the scripture.
And you kind of get the feel that Abraham, like, I always was like, men are bad. So Abraham was like, yeah, another, I'll be careful how I say that, but another, you know.
No, it's
but
true.
You don't really get that vibe when you, like, read it.
There's a really strange theme of, like, weird female sexual dominance in Genesis. It's strange.
Yeah, like with the mandrakes and the weird stuff that they do.
It's completely like counterintuitive. Like it's funny, like when I hear atheists talk about the Bible and the Old Testament and all this, like I actually had a debate one time with one of them, and like I was just reading it to him and explaining, and he goes, "There's no way that this is what it says," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "There's no way there's an ancient Near Eastern document that says this about women," and I'm like, "It's right there." He goes, "No, it's." I'm like, what? Like, it was so strange, but he was just like, there's no way. Because his entire premise was an ancient Near Eastern document, blah, blah, blah. But there are episodes, like, in Genesis where...
There's some uncomfortable things that the women do.
Yeah, the women are completely dominating the dude sexually. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's not weird because, a woman's doing that. It's weird because
of the
it's
time
an ancient
period.
Near Eastern document. And then it's also weird how... these stories are never told. They're told like separately, as if they don't relate thematically to each other. There's clearly a theme of feminine dominance right from the beginning in Genesis.
Yep.
Because you listen to the voice of your wife.
Yep.
Right. That's how so it's very interesting and it's like you got this guy that gets sexually assaulted by his daughters. Okay, like they get him drunk and they whatever. Yep. And then you have this guy who's married to two women and they're literally bartering who's going to have him that night based on trading plants.
He doesn't even talk about what he wants.
There's no, it's just, he's coming like, over because here they exchange these plants. Okay, you can have the mandrakes. You can have them for tonight, no problem. Like, it's so, and the guy goes along with it. He goes along with it. Same thing with Abraham and Sarah. She's like, "Look, the pregnancy thing isn't working. Go in it." Like, it's just like it's weird.
If you
I don't know what to do with it.
Watch the Mormon documentaries, and you see like how the men function, like with their multiple wives. Like when they went in their homes, like that guy looked clearly uncomfortable with the multiple wives situation because I think it caused a lot of consternation and stress for the man. Like I never looked at it that way. I always looked at it as like, oh, here's this guy. They always want multiple wives. Blah blah blah. But when you like see it actually played out, it's like it really doesn't go. I don't really think it.
I get anxiety. I get anxiety when I read those.
I mean, you used to say that when we would watch those Mormon
yeah,
documentaries.
'cause I know. I'm like, there's no way, bro. Like,
It would
I'd
be-
like,
it
listen,
wouldn't be a
I'd
good
say,
situation.
listen, you got to find somebody else, bro. I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm out. What do you
So
give the
anyway,
song?
I'm not done.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
So, so anyway, so I was like doing that thing where I'm like, looked at my life, like I just saw all the highlights of all the bad points of my life or the ones that I could remember. And I was like, wow, this is a really like, I'm not really liking this storyline or how this looks. And I thought of the people of the Bible and I was like, wait a minute, are the people in the Bible highlighted because they're super significant people? Or are they highlighted, or is it just, these are stories of people? And throughout history, there's going to be, we all have our own story. And if you were to take a clip of those people's lives, like you could also find themes of sin and faith and overcoming and being discouraged and all the different things that we all face. And so I was reminded that Sarah, after she did that Handmaid's Tale, and then after the baby is born, she's actually crazier than that, because after the baby gets born, she ends up getting pregnant. And so then she doesn't want that kid
Though,
with
to
her
Handmaid's
kid.
Tale point, it was women that really invented the entire thing. It was the wife, Serena or whatever. She was the one that like came up with the entire concept.
She didn't know it was going to eat her alive too, though.
Right, but like it's just interesting. The
Yeah.
parallels, are
100%.
are
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah. So she ends up saying like the woman and the kid, they have to go, and she like boots them out in the middle of the desert, like they're gonna die, like so much so that the woman's name is Hagar. She goes out there and she's like thinks she's gonna die. She puts her baby far away because she doesn't want to hear him die. And that's when God meets her. Vinny was talking about this the other day, where he meets with her and then she names God, "You're the God that hears me." And God protects her and takes care of her. And but so you're looking at Sarah like, what type of person are you? You know, like you created this situation, you threw this woman and a baby out there. But it's crazy because in the New Testament, when it talks about her, it doesn't talk about all the shitty things that she did. It talks about her as being a woman of faith. And it also in 1 Peter uses her as an example for us to look to. And I don't know, it was just like, but I was like, then there's that verse in Psalm 139. And I'm saying all this stuff, but I don't fully have it. Like I haven't been able to completely grasp this. And I don't know when, but I know God's going to bring me to it. But he says like that everything, even the words that I'm about to say, God already knows what they are. He knows everything. He knows all of my thoughts he can discern my thoughts from far away, like everywhere. It doesn't matter where I go. Like if I choose to go to like the darkest, most horrible places, which I did make that decision for a while. And when I was in that place, like I know that God was with me. I didn't necessarily feel him, but I look back and I'm like, okay, he was there. He was carrying me. But I'm like, if he knows all of your thoughts, and he knows everything that you're going to say before you say it, and he knows the start of your life from the ending, and he wrote it all, and he knit you together in your mother's womb, like he put you then, and he's in all of that. And it says that his thoughts to us are more in number than the sands of the sea, but his thoughts toward us are good. And then you see like Sarah's life and you're like, well, he did. When he wrote about Sarah, he didn't talk about he said what her story was. Like, I mean, this is who she was. But when it got to the New Testament, it says all this positive stuff about her and talks about her being a woman of faith. Then the story that I was seeing at my death, where it was all these horrible things, like that's not my story, and that's not the story that they're going to tell. And then I just thought of like, you know, you'll talk about like when people die, like if you believe, like we believe, you're more alive after you die than you are when you're here. So like, you know, your mom is more alive, like all those people are more alive then. And then, I don't know, it was just a crazy picture because it's like, even if, because I thought, like, I don't think a lot of people would show up to my funeral, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think so either. Like, the same as you said. I was like, it's kind of a dark thought, but I don't really think a lot of people would show up. And I just, like, in that moment, like, as soon as that thought, there was, two stories. Like, there was, like, one crew that was telling the one story that was super dark, and then there was another crew that was like, yeah, but. And, like, that yeah, but story was, like, can you imagine? Like, it says that when one sinner repents, that all the angels rejoice. Like, that sound must be crazy. And so the idea that when we die, we're more alive on the other side, and all those people that went before us, all those people of faith with all their shitty stories, but they're people of faith, all those people are going to greet you. So your funeral, I mean, what is it? Like, oh, look at these people. They don't know anything. They didn't show up. But who cares? Like, all those other people show up. All those other people that you looked to and you read their stories and you got encouragement from. I don't know. It was just a crazy picture because, like, I was like, this is the difference between faith and no faith. And when you don't have faith, like, and I think that faith it's a gift. Like, I don't think that you can make faith happen. I think that faith is something that comes from God. But I do think that it takes like that, the walk crawl thing from the song before. Like, sometimes you got to fight for it and sometimes you got to crawl for it. But if you really want it, and that's what he says. He said, like, if you sit like the person that sells everything to buy the field because they know the treasures in the field, like, it's about selling everything. Like, you realize that there's nothing left in this world, nothing that can carry you, nothing. And when you get to that point, like, and Jesus is like literally the only answer, and you just kind of like throw yourself onto it, and he's there. And there's like, so I don't know. It's just amazing. Like, I'm in a different place like today than I was yesterday, in a different place yesterday than I was the day before. And like, some days I'm crawling and some days I'm running, but like, I'm going. So anyway, I'm just like, I don't know. That's just a crazy thought that like he can know. And like I said, I'm still not there yet because it's so hard for me to believe. Like, when I think about that like he knows everything, but he still loves me and his thoughts are more in number than the sands. I mean, I couldn't even think, if I wanted to make myself sound like the most amazing woman on the planet, I would, a couple pages I could probably write out, like, and exaggerate some stuff maybe. But like, what do you mean? More thoughts than the sand of the sea? Like, how is that even possible? Like, well, how can there be that much? But that's like that for like all of us. Like, I don't know. It's a crazy thought, but it's also crazy to think that forgiveness is there for us, and that I don't know. I'm still wrestling with that, the forgiveness, the grace stuff. I believe it. Like, if I'm talking to somebody else, like, it's easy for me to say, oh no, like all that's completely taken. For myself though, it's a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit harder to get there. And I've like, there are moments where I feel like I sit in that understanding and like, I get it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this was so simple. Like you said, like, we're all sinners from start to finish. That's all of us. But God loved us before we first loved him, and he knew everything. Like, if I believe he knows everything, then of course. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things, like some things that, they say, like, if it's too good to be true, then it is. Like, that sort of mentality, I think, is still like kind of like floating around. Like, how is this possible? But then, like I said, there's those two storylines, because there's another part of me that believes is full of faith and is like, yeah, no, that's mine. Like, that's mine. Jesus is mine. And the other thing too, I know I'm talking a lot, but a lot of times I don't take up all the time for the reviews. So I'm going now. The other thought that I had was, I kept thinking about my death for like the past 5 years. Every time I thought about my death, it was either like a scary thought, or it was like I wanted to die thought, or whatever. Like, but then like, now I'm like, our whole lives, like, we live together because we're all together, but you're also alone because you're living your life. You're yourself, and there's only so close that you can go to other people before, like, you can't get any close. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. There is a point where you're you and they're them. And I was like, I don't know, like, I believe fully that in my death, Jesus is going to be right there. The same Jesus that carried me through my whole life. And there's that verse that you quote, like, that shepherd that's been with me my whole life long. And I'm like, believing that and like knowing that, like, I'm telling you, like, that is some real reassurance, like real reassurance that like he's going to be there, and it's not. So you're not alone. And I think that in this life, we're not alone, especially if you have Christ. But I think in the moment of our death, he's going to be more real than anything, because you're crossing over from like this realm to like the realist realm. And so as you're making that crossover, like, he's there. And I think that he's the realest he's ever been. So I don't think that you're alone in your death if you belong to Christ. I think that you're going to be as far from loneliness as you can get in that moment. But anyway, read Psalm 139, you guys. It's really good.
Miss Mudd says, has anyone heard of the book Invisible Monsters? There's a line in it that says, if God is watching, we must never be boring. It's a good line. 9.4 for me.
This is another one, 9.8. I'm really liking all of these songs. I like the guy's vocal style too.
I've never seen you give a low grade to Insomnium.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We got one more song there. Let's be right back. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.